Welcome, everyone, to the second session of the virtual Neighborhood Summit series. And I apologize, we're running a little late. We have had technology problems. Lots of people have had that this year, so we're not immune to that. Although we held two prior in-person summits last year, COVID-19 has really prevented those in-person events this year. And we didn't want to stop, though, the success that we had with those events, so we've gone virtual. And I have, for many, many years, stressed the importance of neighborhoods to Lexington. And that's where I first learned so much about my community. Neighborhood associations and groups can really make quality of life better. And if you don't live in an area with a neighborhood association, you can still work together with your neighbors to beautify and advocate and form a neighborhood association. So right now, in the middle of this global pandemic, our neighbors are more important than ever. And now's the perfect time to give a neighbor a call, leave a special treat, just simply say hello, wearing your mask, of course. And we are all facing different levels of isolation as we battle COVID-19, and our neighborhoods can be the sense of community that we need. The neighborhood summits are focused on sharing information and ideas. Even though we can't do this in person over coffee and donuts, we can still listen and learn. So some of you I know saw the first in this series, and I recognized our council members. They serve our city well and work with our neighborhoods every single day. So I wanted to recognize them again. In case you don't know your council member, our vice mayor is Steve Kay. Our council members at large are Richard Maloney and Chuck Ellinger. First District Council Member James Brown. Second District Council Member Josh McKern. 3rd District, Mark Swanson. 4th District, Susan Lamb. 5th District, Bill Farmer. 6th District, Lisa Higgins Horde. 7th District, Preston Morley. 8th District, Fred Brown. 9th District, Jennifer Massotti. 10th District, Amanda Mays Bledsoe. 11th District, Jennifer Reynolds. And 12th District, Councilmember Kathy Plomin. Now, the first of our 3-day summit series we held just yesterday, and we had a discussion on Lexington's public works and infrastructure. And for today's summit session, we're focusing on the work of the Mayor's Commission for Racial Justice and Equality. And you can watch this and the other summits on lexingtonky.gov. There will be a place on the home page to click on racial justice, and you can watch these summits. 2020, if nothing else, has taught us just how much we need to learn to overcome systemic racism that affects not only our country, but our community. Back in June, when I started having discussions with Dr. Gerald L. Smith and Mrs. Rosalind Akins, it was clear we needed to do something to move forward in combating systemic racism in Lexington. And so I appointed the Mayor's Commission for Racial Justice and Equality in July and asked the group of 70 local citizens to take a hard look at the racism that holds our community back. Their final report includes 54 recommendations. So we have a lot of work ahead of us, and some of the recommendations are short-term goals, while others will take time. We have an internal group here in government going through every recommendation and starting the work on achieving these goals. I want to introduce our panelists for this important discussion. Today, I'm joined by 3 panelists who worked very, very hard all summer long and fall to guide and support the commission, to lead the commission, and produce this final 68-page report. And I'd like to ask each of them to introduce themselves, give a little bit of background of their involvement in the community and the work accomplished on the Commission for Racial Justice and Equality. First of all, we have the Commission co-chair, Mrs. Rosalind Akins, who's with us by phone. And I want to welcome you, Roz, and ask for your brief comments to kick us off.
Sure. Thank you, Mayor. I'm Rosalind Akins. I am a native of right here in Lexington, Kentucky, attended Transylvania University, and I am in my 42nd year as an educator here in the Fayette County Public School System, and I'm the executive director for the BMW Academy here in our city.
Wonderful. Roz is known by many, many people. She's what I call a mover and shaker. Next up, I have my other co-chair of the commission, another mover and shaker, Dr. Gerald L. Smith. Welcome, Dr. Smith.
Welcome. Thank you, Mayor. Again, my name is Gerald Smith, and I'm a professor of history at the University of Kentucky. I'm also pastor of Pilgrim Baptist Church here in Lexington, located on Jefferson Street. I, too, am a native of Lexington, a graduate of Henry Clay High School, and all three of my degrees from the University of Kentucky. I grew up on the what we consider the East End part of Lexington, so just honored to serve as a co-chair of this commission.
Thank you so much. Finally, our third panelist is our Commissioner of Social Services here in government, Chris Ford. Welcome, Chris.
Thank you, Mayor, and good morning to our co-chairs and everybody watching the virtual summit this morning. As the Mayor mentioned, I serve as the Commissioner of Social Services, and I had the great fortune to have an up-close view of the work of the Commission led by Ms. Roz and Dr. Smith and all of our vice chairs. And we also were fortunate to provide the behind the scenes, the administrative support and logistical support to the Commission. A lot of work went on during this summer, and they worked hard, and we were fortunate to support them. We had a great team here at City Hall supporting that work, Mayor, and later perhaps in our summit, I'll name our teammates by name, but glad to be here this morning.
Very good, thank you. Thank you to all three of you for being here. These three people, they worked so hard and were so dedicated to the cause. I believe now is our moment to make change in Fayette County, and they worked very hard to help us get to a point where we can start this important work. So let's just start right out with Roz. Roz, can you give us some insight as to how the commission did its work and talk just a little bit about what the 5 subcommittees were?
Yes, we had 5 subcommittees. They were housing and gentrification, health disparities, racial equity, law enforcement and accountability, and education and economics. Now, each of those 5 subcommittees had 2 co-chairs. They had 2 vice chairs, and they led each of the members of their committee. And let me say that all 5 of these committees were very diverse. Was a great cross-section of the folks who live here in our city. And they invited guests in, they did research, they had guest speakers. I mean, they really were the workhorses that pulled all the information together in making the recommendations to Dr. Smith and I, and we in turn making those recommendations to the city. So we even had virtual town hall meetings to get input from our city, from all of our citizens. And so it truly was a hard-working opportunity for all of these folks who were on these subcommittees.
Yes, I appreciate that. They did a lot of really good work. Now, we have had several of our citizens email questions in. So we're going to get right to those. And so it may seem we're skipping around to different subjects, but this is what came in from our citizens. So Gerald, this one is for you. And so Gail Reese asks, do you have any insights you can share about the young African-American gun violence and murders in Lexington? Oh, we're starting right out with a tough one.
Well, it's a very common question that we, particularly in the African American community, have heard from years. Typically, it's that familiar rejoinder, black on black crime. What about black on black crime? We hear about Black Lives Matter, but what about black on black crime? And so, my response to that, first of all, is to acknowledge that, yeah, black on black crime is a problem. When we look at the Bureau of Statistics, when it comes to crime, it's quite clear that, blacks kill other blacks, just like whites kill other whites. And I think so when we look at it from a historical standpoint, and we ask that question, what about, the black youth who with guns and killing, we have to ask ourselves a question about our gun laws, one, in terms of availability of guns to young people and people in general. But we also have to look at this from a historical standpoint. And that simply means, where does this concern come from? Is it a question of diversion? What does it say about the continuing existence of police brutality? But it also, when we look at this issue, we have to be mindful of poverty. We have to be mindful of proximity, opportunity, access, and of course, even morality as well. And I think for years, not only years, but generations of African Americans in the community have been working and addressing, this particular concern. I mean, there are a number of organizations on the local and national level that are seeking to address this problem. A number of states are involved with it. I know even in our church, we have a social mentoring group, where we're reaching out to young men at Harrison Elementary School, for example, in terms of trying to, be the kind of role model, but also, just kind of give them some additional guidance and direction alongside their parents. But again, historically, we have to be very cognizant of the lingering legacy of racism and inequality in our country, and why we continue to have gaps when it comes to the wealth gap, educational gaps, health disparities. Why are they in existence in the first place? And so, again, it's not surprising that you would see this, because, when African American youth are involved in these kinds of crimes, they're not driving across town somewhere to do it. I mean, it's right there within their own communities. And so, that's just sort of the short answer to that.
Mm-hmm.
I could go even further into addressing that question in terms of, what does it say about stereotypes and myths, the whole idea or belief among many that African Americans have some sort of pathological problem that's inherent, that leads them to, engage in this kind of behavior. Historically, blacks have been deemed as being criminals, dangerous, threatening, and sort of fits all into that narrative in terms of why we even have those kind of questions or have to deal with that sort of problem. But again, it's a diversion, unfortunately, from the real issues that are at stake.
Mm-hmm. And our viewers, if they listen very carefully to everything you said, this is a complex, multi-layered solution that we need to come to see change. Thank you for that. Chris, this one's for you. And it's actually not exactly about social services. However, are we moving forward with increased civilian review of police practice? What do you know about that today?
Mayor, in the context of the report, I know that we have the 5 subcommittees, and the subcommittee on law enforcement, justice, and accountability, I think had the most members, and they perhaps had the most meetings. There was a lot of discussion in regards to how to have a citizen voice and accountability and participation in that process. I know the report speaks to that. And then I know internally, our commissioner, my colleague Ken Armstrong in public safety is working really closely with Chief Weathers in the police command, in the mayor's office, and the council has already begun to take steps to look at some of these community engagement aspects of policing. So I cannot speak definitively on where we are, but I do know that a lot of attention is in that area now, and I anticipate that will continue right along with our study of the commission's reports and its recommendations.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Now, the next question's for the mayor. Billy Mallory asks, at this point, the review of the task force report and what bodies or individuals are responsible for what seems to be a little disjointed. Mayor and administration doing some work, public safety committee addressing police issues, and vice mayor and council doing some work, but nothing seems to be well defined. Is there a definitive plan for moving forward, and who is reviewing what, and what's the timeline for all this? Woo, okay, now we're into it. Well, let me just say that as far as myself and my administration, we immediately took this report and we have groups, teams of people inside government who are looking at every single one of the recommendations. And they've started putting them into a grid. And the grid tells certain things such as who would need to be our partners. Is there a cost associated with the recommendation? Is this short-term or long-term? You know, they're trying to organize each recommendation so that we understand what it will involve and where it will take us. So that is going on inside my administration, and they're making really good, Chris, I know, is part of that, and they're making wonderful progress. And as far as the Public Safety Committee, that's a council committee, and they are looking at and hearing certain police issues for discussion in the council. Now, as far as the vice mayor has called a committee of the whole for the entire council, and that is meeting tomorrow. And what they're going to do is hear from Dr. Smith and Ms. Akins about the report. And it's my understanding they're wanting kind of a broad picture of what it is, what it did, what some of the highest recommendations are. And so we're all taking this very seriously. It is a big effort. And I'm determined that we are going to make progress. And in fact, we're getting ready to take a couple of things to council that were recommendations. They're not fully vetted out, but we're going to take them soon. And one of the recommendations we're working on is for a permanent commission on racial justice and equality. So that's kind of a snapshot of what's going on. The next question is for Chris again. What can be done to improve and increase in programming devoted to at-risk youth that can provide real-life work experiences? We already know, and Chris knows this, we already have our summer youth job training program. Is this something we could expand, Chris?
Yes, Mayor. I think that definitely so. Before we embarked upon this COVID era, that its onset was earlier this year. And I before I answer that question, Mayor, I just want to tip my hat to Ms. Roz and Dr. Smith and all the commission members who embraced this hard work of the commission with full participation during the summer season and during this COVID era. But prior to COVID's onset, we at City Hall were very much looking forward to our summer youth job training program redesign. Our team at Partners for Youth, our business community, and our partners at Fayette County Public School were working to shift the program in a different direction. We were focusing on all 6 high schools, and we were focusing on equally providing opportunities for as many students in each part of town to participate. I think we will continue to hopefully that the pandemic will subside at some time in the next few months, where we can actually enact our summer youth job training program. But I do think that in additional resources and opportunities for our youth are on the top of our radar. It may be different in delivery as we, I don't think that we'll totally perhaps get out of the pandemic environment in calendar 21. We hope so. But with all that into account, Mayor, we're definitely hoping to provide job training opportunities, mentoring opportunities, just engagement for our youth. And we understand that that's important in the context of the report.
Yes, if all of the predictions come true, it seems that most of the public can be vaccinated in April, May, and June, and many of them before. So I'm hopeful, because I really think that's a terrific program for our youth. Gerald and Roz, the next question is for each of you. In your opinion, and this could be an hour-long discussion, but if you can just maybe limit it to 1 or 2, in your opinion, what are the most important recommendations in the report? I know that's a hard question. Roz, do you want to start us?
Yeah, let me start. And with education being my passion, I guess I will go there first. Was the call for universal kindergarten or for all of our students to help close the academic achievement gap, that there would be a meeting or a collaboration of all the entities that deal with early childhood education, Fayette County Public Schools, Community Action, any private or public areas that deal with early childhood education, that they would all come together and make sure that everyone is on the same page curriculum-wise, so that every child can get a great start in their early childhood education before they begin school. And so I thought that was very important. And we hope that that universal kindergarten, however it's done publicly, privately, through community action, that would be something that we definitely need, because I think the earlier a child can get a great foundation to their education, then we can have the opportunity to close that academic achievement gap. So that would be that sticks out with me. So I'll let Dr. Smith.
Yes, thank you, Dr. Smith.
Yes, this is one of the frequent questions that we get, in terms of where do we start, what's the priority. They're also interrelated, that it's very difficult to highlight just one, because if I'm talking about health disparities, then I'm also talking about housing. If I'm talking about housing, I'm also, talking about law enforcement. And so I said that to say this, that, clearly in this era of this pandemic, health is very important. And so I would, strongly urge the council and others to look at health disparities. That subcommittee pointed out several things regarding food insecurities, regarding transportation, creating some sort of frame of communication between the government and other health agencies, hospitals, in the city of Lexington. This carries over into looking at mental health issues as well, and drug addiction and so forth. So I would not necessarily highlight one above the other, because they're too intertwined.
Yes, it is a very, very thorough report that has many complex, I think, complex recommendations that are requiring us to really dig deep and figure out how we can do them. But we're determined. Chris, Alicia Katara asks, when and how will the public know when recommendations from the report will be completed? That's a good question.
It's a really interesting question, Mary. I think that this work, and we've had these discussions, I think internally and amongst with our co-chairs, that this work is going to be ongoing. I don't think that, just in my opinion, I don't think that this is a task where we can come back perhaps in 3 months and say we've checked off all the recommendations.
Right.
And Mayor, I believe that your vision was just for this work to begin the process. You know, over the commission began in June when the mayor announced it, and the commission began its work in earnest right after the 4th of July. Everything was done virtually and everything was done remotely, but there was full participation. And I believe that the commission was very committed to be open, transparent, and strive to have many voices heard. And so for those that are who may have missed the work of the commission, we want you to know that we have cataloged all of those videos. Everything is still online at lexingtonky.gov. But going back to when the timeline, Mayor, I do think that there will be some things, as you alluded to earlier, that we'll be able to announce sooner than others. I know that the administration and the council has already began to look at things such as the disparity study for minority businesses. That has already been publicly discussed as just one example. So we want this to be a living document. We don't want it, I think early on, there was discussion of commission and report fatigue. You know, we go through an exercise, we produce a report, and it may collect dust on the shelf. From my observation of all the discussions across the various subcommittees, everybody seems to be very adamant that that does not happen, and even more so committed to ensure that we keep this report and this recommendations top of mind. So we'll be working on it for quite a while. I mean, it's a lot of work to be done, but we can accomplish a lot, I hope. I think we hope.
Yes, I appreciate that. I think that's why one of the reasons it's so important to have a permanent commission. The report itself is so important, and all of those recommendations, the sustainability and the continuous improvement is equally important. And, you know, Gerald and Roz each heard me say when we met earlier with the Chamber of Commerce, Commerce Lex, I challenged each of those board members, and there were about 50 or so on the call, to read this report. We want our citizens to read this report. That's the first step for the citizens. And so I'm going to keep saying that. I hope they will have their business members say it. You know, the more of our citizens who can read it and talk about it and understand it, the better it will be for all of us to keep moving forward. Let me ask you one other question, Chris, that's a little different. Has there been consideration for putting something into place where taxes on existing residences would not be raised if a neighborhood is gentrified? That's kind of a different question, isn't it?
Well, yes, ma'am. And it speaks to one of the subcommittees of the commission, which was housing and gentrification. It was an issue that I believe the co-chairs felt really strongly that we ought to consider, and we're very glad that we were able to incorporate this into the commission's overall report. Prior to that time, there was a council task force led by Councilmember James Brown and Vice Mayor Kay that was already talking about the gentrification aspects impacting our neighborhoods. As we speak, our administration is working very hard to study almost in a laser focus on the recommendations of the Housing and Gentrification Task Force report. And we feel that we will be able to present something for the mayor's view and for the council's consideration very soon. But there's been many discussions about how we can, simply put, Mayor, to fight displacement, and how housing displacement usually has the most detrimental impact to communities of color. So taxes, housing finance, equity, and all those things are on the table. And we've had a lot of discussion. I anticipate we'll have even more so going forward.
Yes, it's multi-layered, isn't it? Now, this next one is from Jan Geddes, and it's a little bit of a complicated, long question, but she's asked it of Roz and Gerald. So I'll ask each of you. School systems have been complicit in perpetuating systemic racism, including practices ranging from discriminatory discipline to inequitable school funding and staffing to curriculum tracking and school segregation. How can Fayette County Public Schools establish the fully equitable funding of schools and work toward desegregation? Now that's her first question. Her second is, what will it take to create greater cross-cultural understanding, reduced prejudice and bias, and stronger civic participation? That's a tough one. Gerald, I'm going to start with you this time.
Well, I was going to suggest that you start with Reverend Akins
because
she's the educator.
I started with her twice. I thought I'd give you a chance.
Yeah, no, that's fine. That's fine. No, that is, that is going to be a challenge in many ways. Not only in terms of from a budget standpoint, but just from a certain sort of mindset that we have to come from in terms of, how do we make that change? And obviously there is, and this is also addressed in the report, by the way, a sincere need to recruit as well as retain, more African-American teachers and principals, especially, those who reflect the population that they're seeking to educate, so that those students can see those individuals in the classroom who can relate to their experiences, and not only the child's experiences, but also the experiences of the parents and the neighborhoods in which they serve as well. I think also it's very important for individuals who are concerned about this to do all they can to educate themselves, because education is not just simply in the classroom, but it's also in the home as well. And so the more exposure that we give, all of our students to people who do not look like them or do not have a background that they share, the better that will be for the entire school system. So and I say this in a broader sense as well, just, having grown up in Lexington and knowing this community, we as a community have to become much more race conscious. And that's very evident in the report, how we are not, as a community, very race conscious. We pride ourselves on being, the heart of the bluegrass, and everybody gets along well with one another. But, that's simply not the case. And it's manifested in various ways that is apparent on a personal level to African Americans who are experiencing the levels of systemic and systematic racism that promotes structural inaccuracies that, unfortunately impacts many of our children.
Yes, thank you for that. Ms. Akins, what would you like to add to that? Roz?
I was saying, I really and truly believe that Fayette County is making an effort to try to reach all students and to do things that are creative and innovative and out of the box to reach the needs of all children in our school system. Like they started programs like Carter G. Woodson Academy, which was a creative, innovative program, as someone asked earlier in a question, to meet the needs of boys, in particular African-American males and Latino males, to expose them and give them opportunities maybe that they would not have had on another level or in a regular school setting. It's very intentional, because here's the thing we have to understand. Boys learn differently from girls. And so they really need to see how that our school system is really trying to meet that need. They've created programs like the RISE Academy, which girls don't usually do STEM. So that's a program there. And so I really, truly believe that they're trying to expose young people to being creative, innovative, and out of the box. Also, I know the school system does a lot of professional development when it comes to implicit bias, to help teachers to understand that, you know, they need to be able to teach all children. And as the report, in Education Economics report, they did make an all-out effort talking about recruiting more African-American male teachers, including all African-American teachers, because you can't be what you don't see. And so they looked at ways that we could possibly do that in the report of recruiting more African-American teachers. I'm happy to say that this past year, Fayette County, 6, I believe it was, new African-American principals were assigned to different schools in our school system. But we've got to work in those areas that have strong PTAs that are primarily on the south end of town, that are able to subsidize many of the programs that school has, when you might see an elementary school on the north end of town that may not have as a stronger PTA that can subsidize many of the programs and offer extra things there, that there needs to be a way how we as a school system can make those adjustments to make sure that kids are having access to all things in all schools. And so we're just going to have to be creative, innovative, out of the box, so that we can meet the needs of all children in our school system.
Yes, thank you for that. Also for Gerald and Roz, what surprised you the most about the work on the commission, and what surprised you the least in your work? Was there anything just that comes to mind?
No, I don't think anything surprised me. I think a lot of the recommendations and the things that came out of the commission just affirmed some of the things that are happening in our city. It just kind of confirmed and affirmed that there still needs to be some changes and some things done differently in our city that pretty much we had just kind of been complacent about. And so I don't think there were really any surprises. It was more confirmation and affirmation for me of some changes that need to take place in our city.
Okay. What about you, Gerald? Was there anything that surprised you?
There was nothing that really surprised me. I agree with Roz, but you know, what I was very pleased with and proud to share, you know, the vision, the very creative, empowering solutions that each of the subcommittees recommended in terms of how we address these issues, the sort of action steps that were necessary. I think we were aware of the problem. We just were not sure in terms of how to address the problem. And so that's where the expertise and the knowledge, you know, from our vice chairs and all those persons who sat on the commissions, subcommittees, that was impactful.
Mm-hmm. Yes, it was.
I guess let me add there. One surprise was that on the Law Enforcement and Accountability Committee, one of the members said that there was no systemic racism when it came to our police department here in Lexington. He did not believe there was systemic racism, and that was not a problem. And I disagree with that, because I live in a predominantly white neighborhood. And one night I was coming from Walmart late, running to get something for a trip I was taking the boys' academy on, and I had a little fender bender in front of my subdivision. And the first thing, when we called the police, the first thing the policeman asked me was, this is about 11:45, late at night. First thing the policeman asked me was, what was I doing in this neighborhood this time of night?
Ooh.
When it was the neighborhood that I lived in. And so for someone to say that they don't believe systemic racism in our police department is not existent, then they have not walked in my shoes to be asked. And I was interrogated for about 3 minutes on why I was in this subdivision until a neighbor came out and called my name and said, "Roz, are you okay?" Then the whole attitude changed. So we do have problems. We need to address them and just face the fact that there are problems, but we can be the solution to the problem.
Yes, that is a great point. And I think everybody on this summit knows of other people who have experienced very similar things in Lexington. And we have work to do. We know that. We're winding down on our time, but Chris, I have one more quick one for you. Inmates in the detention center. The question is there anything we can do for them to continue learning and rehabbing and be sure they're treated fairly as they're getting ready to return to the community?
Yes, ma'am, Mayor. I think we're fortunate to have a new leadership transition at the jail. We have Major Lisa Farmer, who's going to be taking that over here real soon and working again with Commissioner Armstrong. Luckily, our community corrections has always been very supportive in working with our team in social services on providing the services that folks who may be there for a while may need to allow them to come back into society. Substance abuse and disorder services are an example of that. I think we will continue to look for ways that we can be as humane and supportive of the folks who are at our detention center for that short time in anticipation for them coming back home to our communities.
Yes, thank you. Gerald and Roz, this is a big task that you've given us. I gave you a big task. Now you've given me a big task. Are you hopeful? Do you think we can make changes? What are you thinking there?
I definitely think we can make changes. Just the fact that you can't fix what you won't face. And the fact, Mayor, that you're willing to face that there are systemic racism issues in our city, there needs to be some changes. The fact that you're willing to face it, then we can certainly as a community come together and fix these areas that need help, and we can come up with some solutions. I'm definitely very hopeful that we can be a community, and as I say, that's always preparing for the next generation. We're not going to be around here forever, so we want to make things better for that next generation. So I am hopeful. Dr. Smith?
I totally agree. We appreciate your vision, Mayor, and your willingness to see meaningful change in this community. And we are blessed to have the privilege to serve as co-chairs. We have excited and optimistic about the interest and anticipation that we're already receiving from the community to move forward.
Yay, I'm hopeful too. Well, Chris, I know you wanted an opportunity to quickly mention the staff members who helped. It was a big administrative task to give the support, which we really were happy to be able to do. Can you mention who served on your support group?
Yes, gladly, Mayor. And on their behalf, I want to express our appreciation for the honor to support the Commission's work. Arthur Lucas, Sharita Miller, Andrea James, Laura Hatfield, Eric Howard, Theresa Maynard, Quinn Welch down in the Mayor's office, Glenn Brown, Glenda George, Tyler Scott, and our CAO, Sally Hamilton, is working really hard as we speak in helping to study these recommendations. So we were just fortunate to support the Commission's work, and we were proud to do so, Mayor.
It was a team effort.
Yes,
Yes. I want to, we're running out of time, unfortunately. I think that the four of us could probably talk for a couple hours if we had that much time. But first of all, I want to give my deepest thanks and gratitude to Ms. Rosalind Akins and Dr. Gerald L. Smith and Commissioner Chris Ford for their time today, for their work since really the 1st of July, and for their dedication to our community, which is what this is all about, is our people. So thank you for joining as panelists today. And I also want to thank our viewers, some of whom submitted questions. And for those of you who tuned in and those of you who will watch on our website later. And I am convinced that we can make the important changes we need to make Lexington a place where everyone feels welcome and safe, and where everyone has the opportunity to get a good job and a good education. And this is all about all of our people. And I have said before, and I'll say again, as mayor, I refuse to tolerate bigotry in our community. And I'm going to continue to do my part to promote diversity, equality, and inclusion throughout our community. And we will stand together as we move through this commission report and recommendations to get to a better place. It has been, this year has been, you could call it a whirlwind 8 months. You could call it a difficult 8 months during COVID-19, which has changed everyone's lives. But this is a way for us to connect on a mission for the greater good. So for those of you who are watching these, don't forget to tune in tomorrow, Thursday, November 19th at 10 o'clock a.m. We will have our panelists discussing COVID-19 here in Fayette County. And as I said before, all of our sessions are recorded. They're on lexingtonky.gov, and we share the links. So thank you again. Thanks again to our panelists, and everybody have a great day. I appreciate you.
Thank you.
Okay, ma'am, you're clear.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Gerald. Thanks, Roz. Thanks,
Thank you.
Chris. We'll stand together as we move through this commission report and recommendations to get to a better place. It has been, this year has been, you could call it a whirlwind 8 months. You could call it a difficult 8 months during COVID-19, which has changed everyone's lives. But this is a way for us to connect on a mission for the greater good. So for those of you who are watching these, don't forget to tune in tomorrow, Thursday, November 19th at 10 o'clock a.m. We will have our panelists discussing COVID-19 here in Fayette County. And as I said before, all of our sessions are recorded. They're on lexingtonky.gov, and we share the links. So thank you again. Thanks again to our panelists, and everybody have a great day. I appreciate you.
Thank you.
Okay, ma'am, you're clear.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Gerald. Thanks, Roz. Thanks,
Thank you.
Chris.